Hi, this video is part of my complete Docker and Kubernetes course. The link is in the description of the video, so make sure to give a thumbs up, and if you don't want to miss any updates, subscribe to the channel. That being said, let's get started. Hello and welcome back. We are approaching the end of this project. Let's then implement our nodes backend here. And let's start once again by creating two files. That's going to be the models.js and the routes.js, like so. I'm going to copy the code here from our notebooks backend. So let's just copy it here. We're going to update the things we have to update. So let's open the models. Important that the models here is under the nodes backend folder. Let's paste it here. The first two lines stay the same. Then we would have node schema, and the node schema will have a title. This title will be of type string and it will be required. It will also have a content. The type will be string and it will also be required. And it might be connected to a certain notebook. So we're going to add here notebook ID, and the notebook ID will be of type schema.types.object ID. This will ensure that we are storing valid object IDs whenever saving the notebook ID. This will not be required, so it will be false. And the default value here, in case this is not provided, we will just store null. Let's then save this here. Let's copy the node schema. Let's come down. We're going to say node is equal to mongoose.model node. And then we say node schema. And in the module.exports, we're just going to export our node. The routes will be very similar to the ones we have in our notebook service. So I'm just going to open the routes here. I'm going to copy this. And let's paste this inside of the routes file. So the nodes backend folder, src, and then routes.js. Let's paste it here and let's scroll up a little bit and let's start refactoring it. So we're going to say node instead of notebook. And now this is going to be our node router. So now we need to change here from notebook router to node router everywhere. If you wish to do a find and replace or a refactor in your IDE, then by all means go ahead. That's definitely much easier than what I'm doing here and less error prone. But I'm just going to do it manually here. And once we do that, we will have a validate ID. So this is still something valid for us. We would like to return here node not found in case the ID is not valid. For the post request, we are going to have a title, a content, and potentially a notebook ID. If there is no title or no content here, so we will say that both the title and the content are mandatory. We will simply say here title, content, fields are required, right? So just title, content, fields are required. Let's save this here. And now we have this notebook ID here. The notebook ID is something that we will need to handle a little bit more carefully, because we would like to actually reach out to the notebook's backend to make sure that this notebook ID is actually existing. So let's actually skip the notebook ID for now. I'm just going to remove it here. We're going to add it in a later lecture. Once we confirm here that we have both the title and the content, we can then just create our new node. The node is equal to new node, and then we'll simply use title : content, and then we'll say await node.save, and the data that will return here is just the node back. Let's then change here the get method to also reach out to the node model. Let's find everything. Let's store this under nodes, and then we'll simply send back the nodes here. Since the refactoring is going a little bit faster than I expected, we can actually tackle all the methods here and check that our nodes backend is also working as expected. So for getting a single node, we will have the validate ID check. So remember, the check is the same. We're just checking whether this is a valid object ID. So we would like to have this validation here. And then we would like to use the node model instead of the notebook. We will also refactor this to be a node. So let's say here, if not a node, we will simply send back node not found. Otherwise, we will just send the node as the data. The same thing for put here. We're gonna have the title and the content. And in the case here, both title and content, they are not strictly required because maybe we are trying to just update the title or just update the content. So I'm just gonna leave it as it is, and we will just leverage both the title and the content here. You might be tempted to actually put the entire request.body here, but I would caution against that because we lose a little bit of control over which kind of information is actually being passed to our node, and this should be node here, to our node model. I'd rather have just the title and the content here as we have done already explicitly. So let's have title and content like so. Let's then also rename our notebook variable to note. And let's then just use it here. Let's rename notebook to note, and let's send it back as the data. Last but not least, in our delete body here, let's use note. We're gonna use the note model, find by ID and delete. This stays the same. If there is no note here, we're just gonna send back that note was not found. Otherwise, we will delete it and send a status of 204 back. I believe these are all the changes that we need to implement in our routes that is coming from notebooks or just updating it to work with notes. Let's then come to server, and then once again here we're gonna import, or we're gonna require here the node router. That's gonna come from our router, so require.routes like so. And we also need the body parser. So body parser is equal to require body parser. We're gonna use this body parser here in our app Express. So in our Express app.use body parser.json. And then we will also use this here to handle our requests. So we're gonna use under the /API/notes. We're just gonna use our node router. Perfect. Let's save this and let's come to Postman to confirm that we can reach out and perform the operations in the nodes backend. In Postman, let's remove this ID here. Let's change from API notebooks to API notes. And let's try to send a GET request. And the moment we do that, we start getting an empty array back. That means that the endpoint is working as expected because we have no nodes so far. So let's send a post request to nodes. We have not informed the correct fields. So remember, for nodes, we have title and content. And if we were to try to create with these fields, we get the error that both title and content fields are required. So let's just put a title here. That's going to be my node. And the content will be an amazing node. And then if we were to send this post request, we get our node back. You can see that the notebook ID here is null because we are not providing any notebook ID. If we were to now send a GET request, we would get our node back. And if we were to send a GET request to the specific endpoint here of a single node, then we will get the content of the node back. If we pass an invalid ID, let's just send this here, we get the error node not found. And if we were to then try to update this by sending a put request, an updated node like so. Let's send this here. We get the response back. Just double checking that if we send a GET request, we get the updated content. That's amazing. And now we can send a delete request, and this is going to work just fine. 204, no content here. And if we were to send a GET request to the nodes endpoint, so without the ID, to the nodes endpoint, we can confirm that the node is gone. Awesome, we did a lot in this video. We actually set up the entire nodes backend core functionality here. There are still a few things I would like to work with you to make sure that we are providing a better experience to the user. So let's take a short break and come back in the next lecture.